The doors were locked, the lights half off, and someone was still inside Family Dollar. I knew it the second a shopping basket rattled in the dark aisles. It wasn't loud, just a hollow rattle echoing through the rows of shelves. But in a store that had been empty for nearly 30 minutes, it was enough to make my stomach drop. My name's Darren. For the past couple of months, I'd been stuck closing alone. Corporate had cut hours, and my manager decided the night shift could be handled by just one person. So instead of having a second set of hands to count drawers or walk the aisles, it was me doing everything, front to back, lights out to alarm code. On paper, it wasn't complicated. But in reality, standing in a store that stretched back 40 aisles deep, with only glass windows reflecting my own outline at the front, it always felt like too much space for one person. Closing routine was second nature by then. Lock the doors at 10 sharp, pull the cash, sweep the aisles for stragglers or misplaced items, then set the alarm before heading out. I'd done it dozens of times without issue. Still, there was always that weird pressure in my chest when the last customer left and the lock clicked. It wasn't relief. It was the realization that if something went wrong, no one else was coming through that door until morning. That night, I tried to settle into the rhythm. The radio in the back room was playing low static. I'd left it on for company, but it was more hiss than music, and sometimes I thought that made things worse. The clock above the service desk ticked toward 10:30. Every sound seemed amplified, echoing off the tile. I told myself if I hustled, I could be out by 11. That's when I heard it. The squeak of sneakers on tile down the middle run. Distinct, rhythmic. A few steps, then a stop. It wasn't pipes, wasn't the compressor. My head snapped up, but the aisle was empty. All I saw were shadows stretching long from the half-lit fluorescence. I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was the mop bucket. Sometimes, if you leave water in it, the wheels squeal. But my brain didn't buy it. Deep down, I knew I'd just heard footsteps. I forced myself to mutter, "You're hearing things," just to cut the silence. Talking out loud always helped break that feeling of being swallowed up by the building. I went over and checked the front door anyway. The deadbolt was still engaged, solid. That should have made me feel better. But all it really told me was worse. If someone was in here, they'd been in here long before I turned that lock. I turned back, and that's when I caught it. At the far end, in one of those convex mirrors above the corner aisles, a shadow slid across. It wasn't vague. It was a solid, definite shape. And then it froze, stopped dead, like it knew I'd seen it. I stood gripping the counter edge so tight my fingertips ached. I stared at that mirror until my eyes watered. Nothing moved again. I tried to tell myself it could have been my own reflection, distorted by the curve. But I'd worked enough nights to know what I saw. My chest was tight. I replayed the head count from earlier. Last customer had been a woman in scrubs, buying bleach and paper towels. I remembered her clearly. I rang her up, bagged it, and watched her walk out. The door chimed once. After that, nobody came in. I was certain. I forced myself to walk the aisle, just to prove it empty. Each step echoed too loud. Shelf after shelf of socks, cleaning rags, bottles of detergent. Nothing. Then I looked down. In the middle of the aisle, a single pack of socks lay on the floor. I knew for a fact the floor had been clear when I walked through earlier. I hadn't seen or heard it drop. It was just there. From the back came a sharp snap, the unmistakable crack of plastic, like a hanger being bent until it broke. "Hey!" My voice rang out, louder than I expected. "We're closed. You need to leave." No answer. Just a shuffle of movement, closer than before. And then nothing. That silence was worse than if they'd said something. It wasn't an accident. Whoever was back there wanted me to know. I retreated behind the counter fast, heart banging. My hands fumbled through the security monitor controls until the screen cycled. One by one, the aisles came into view. Empty. Then, movement. The edge of a shape passing through the blind spot, just outside the camera's frame. That was the moment I knew I wasn't imagining it. Someone was in here. And they knew where the cameras couldn't see. My throat went dry. The doors were locked. No one had come in after I closed. That meant this person had been inside before I turned the key. Earlier, I remembered, the stockroom door hadn't been latched tight. I'd noticed it but brushed it off. Now I realized it wasn't forgetfulness. Someone had been waiting. For a long minute, I thought about just running, leaving the safe, leaving the alarm unset, just getting to my car and flooring it. But reality hit. I couldn't. My car keys were clipped to my work bag behind the counter. If I left without it, I'd be stranded in the lot. I told myself, grab the bag, unclip the keys, and get out. Nothing else mattered. I reached under the counter and pulled out the small store flashlight. My hand shook as I clicked it on. The beam felt too thin, swallowed by the aisles. I crept down the main run, flashlight low. That's when I heard it. A slow, steady exhale just behind me. I spun toward the mirror. Nothing. But I swear I felt it. A faint brush of air against the back of my collar before it stopped. My whole body locked up. I didn't run. Not yet. I forced myself forward, fast walking to the counter, snatched my bag, unclipped the keys with trembling fingers, and turned for the door. I only made it 2 steps before arms clamped around me from behind. They were strong, jerking me backward so fast my feet slipped on the tile. The keys dug into my palm as I thrashed. My shirt collar cinched up, choking me. I kicked, twisted, tried to slam my elbow back. My flashlight clattered away, rolling under a shelf. For a moment, panic flooded me. I thought I was going down. Thought I'd be dragged into one of those dark aisles and no one would ever see me again. Adrenaline surged. I thrashed harder, clawed at the arm across my chest, dropped my bag in the struggle. I barely managed to wrench free, tearing myself forward until I stumbled onto my knees. I scrambled up and bolted, clutching the keys like a weapon. I didn't dare look back. I hit the door, shoved it hard, and it banged the stopper as I burst into the parking lot. The night air hit my face like a slap. My car was 10 steps away, but my hands shook so bad I fumbled the fob twice before the lights blinked. I slammed inside, locked every door, and started the engine with trembling fingers. Only then did I let myself breathe. My chest heaved like I'd run a mile. I sped to the far end of the lot and dialed 911 with shaking hands. My voice cracked as I told them someone was in the store. The police came fast. 2 cars. They unlocked the doors, swept the aisles with flashlights, checked every corner. I sat in my car, watching their beams cut through the windows. After nearly an hour, they came back out. Nothing. No intruder. No forced entry. Not a single thing out of place. Even my work bag was there, sitting behind the counter. The safe bag untouched. The officers asked me 3 times if I was sure. I kept saying the same thing. I wasn't crazy. Someone grabbed me. The next morning, my manager called. His voice was clipped. "Everything's here," he said. "Even your bag. They didn't take a thing." But then he added something the officers had told him. A detail that made my stomach turn. A ceiling tile above the registers had been pushed back. Not just nudged, shifted wide enough for a person to fit through. The dust along the edges was disturbed, and there were scuffs on the shelf right below it, like someone had climbed up to reach it. That's when it hit me. Whoever grabbed me hadn't been after the money. They hadn't touched a dime. They wanted me cornered. And the worst part? If they had a way out through the ceiling, That meant they had a way back in. I noticed him the second I pulled into the Family Dollar lot, standing alone under the far streetlight. Not smoking, not on his phone, just watching. The light flickered once and steadied, and he didn't flinch. I told myself I was early for my closing shift, and he was probably waiting on someone. Still, I parked closer to the doors than usual and kept my keys between my fingers until I was inside. My name's Danielle, and I worked part-time closing shifts at that Family Dollar. Because the store was so short-staffed, I usually ended up handling the last hour or so on my own. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. Nights like this made me realize just how risky it was, being the only one left to lock up, count the drawer, and walk out into a dark parking lot with no backup. It wasn't the first time I'd closed alone. Our manager staggers hours to keep payroll down. She leaves by 9, and I finish the last hour and a half, do the count, and hand off the deposit in the morning. It's not smart, but it's normal in places like ours. The store is a small rectangle with the office set into the back wall, a short hall to the delivery door, and long sight lines down the aisles. When the air units kick off, you can hear the coolers hum and the buzz of the light over aisle 3. That's what I listened to as I did my walkthrough, and told myself not to make a whole thing about a stranger in a parking lot. He was still there when I turned the sign to open. We weren't busy, 10 customers maybe, but I kept noticing the shape under the streetlight whenever the door opened. Around 7:30, I wrapped the broken candy peg and straightened end caps. The quiet had that padded sound stores get when most of the fluorescent bulbs are old. I'd pass the front and see him in the corner of the window, same stance, hands in his jacket pockets. People linger all the time. I've worked gas stations. You learn to clock it and keep moving. Half an hour went by and he hadn't moved much at all. He wasn't waiting by a car. He wasn't leaning on the wall to stay warm. He'd pick a new angle, like he was testing sightlines. First the light post, then the corner near the dumpster gate, then 2 squares of sidewalk closer to the glass. When I glanced his way, he didn't look away or scratch his face or pretend to check a phone. He just watched through the reflections. I gave myself a rule. If he came inside, I'd ask if he needed help and then keep distance. If he stayed outside, I wouldn't give him free rent in my head. That sounds strong. But the truth is there are 50 reasons a person might linger. Waiting on an Uber, fighting with someone in a car around the corner, no place else to be. Also, I was behind on facing the paper goods aisle. I wanted to be done before the manager clocked out, so I told myself, count the tissue boxes, lock the case, and stop staring out the window like a kid. When I came back up front to break bills and refill coin rolls, he wasn't under the light anymore. He was by the dumpster gate on the side of the building, just inside the shadow thrown by the brick. There's a narrow access lane there with one camera pointed toward the delivery pad. I watched him in profile for a beat, and the thought that clicked in was simple. He's more comfortable in places I don't see well. I took the box cutter out of the drawer and slid it into my apron pocket because it made me feel better, not because I thought I'd do anything with it. Then I turned half the lights off to start the end-of-night power down and immediately regretted how much darker it made the glass look from outside. The darker it got inside, the more it felt like standing on a stage. Every time I passed the front, I saw him reappear somewhere new, edge of the sidewalk, base of the column, then somewhere that let him watch me without being obvious about it. I stopped propping the office door open. I carried the handheld to the back to finish a quick scan on the soda pallet, telling myself the routine would settle me down. Routine is how you keep fear from making stupid decisions. That, and policies. We don't open doors after close. Period. Something yanked the delivery door hard enough to make the chain bang. The sound skipped across the cinder block and hit me in the ribs. I froze by the stacked Coke flats and felt the stupid weight of the box cutter in my pocket like it was a toy. Then I moved, quick, but not loud, into the short hall and toward the little reinforced glass cutout we used to check trucks. The chain was tight. The deadbolt was thrown. A second tug rattled the metal again, softer this time, like someone testing a rhythm. I looked through the glass, expecting to see a shoulder or a sleeve. He had stepped back enough for me to see his whole upper body in the cone of the security light. Head angled toward the glass, chin slightly raised, eyes on the little window. Not angry, not smiling. Patient. I stepped out of the sight line before he could be sure I'd looked. I shut the office door, turned the lock, and called the non-emergency line. I told the dispatcher I had a loiterer who'd yanked the back door twice and was now pacing my lot. I told her I was alone and closing in 40 minutes. She asked for a description and any weapons. I said I hadn't seen any. She told me an officer would swing by as soon as possible. That phrase is clean and polite. It can mean 5 minutes, or it can mean you're on your own for a while. Our cameras are old, but honest. I pulled up the rear view first. He wasn't in the delivery cone anymore. I flipped to the front and felt my throat go dry. He had moved to the glass doors, angled a few feet off so the reflections hid his face. Not pressed up against anything. Not trying the handle. Just close enough that if I had to walk to my car, it would take me 10 seconds and him too. The worst part wasn't what he was doing. It was how much of it was nothing. My keys sat on the desk next to the deposit bag. I slid them into my pocket and kept the bag in the drawer. If the police took a while, I wanted options. Time stretches strange when you're waiting. 5 minutes can feel like 30 and then snap back. I killed the music. Silence made it easier to hear if he tried a door. For 2 minutes, he disappeared from the front cameras, and I pictured him on the blind strip by the wall where the lens doesn't quite cover, listening for locks. I weighed my choices out loud to make them feel real. Stay in the office until morning and get written up for not finishing, or lock the office and wait for the lights to wash the glass. The cruiser pulled in from the side, rolled past my car, and eased toward the front doors. In the split second where the headlights pinned the sidewalk, I saw him slide backward along the wall by the dumpster gate. No run, no scramble, just a clean pivot into the shadow he already knew. I stepped out with the officer's knock, grateful and shaky in a way that didn't show until I tried to put the key in the front deadbolt from the inside. He offered to escort me to the car while his partner checked the lane. We didn't find him. The partner walked the side access with a flashlight, called out a "clear," and then waved us over to the dumpster pad. Cigarette butts, fresh. Not many, 2 or 3, smoked down short, and boot prints in the powder-dry dust near the concrete seam, sharp enough to count lugs. The officer crouched, looked at the direction they pointed, and then at the black ribbon of woods behind the strip. "If he knows you close alone," he said, "he'll try the same night next week. Don't do it by yourself." I told him our staffing is what it is. He gave me a look that said he'd heard that answer too many times. It was just a report after that. My hands steadied when I had forms to fill out. What time I saw him first, what he did, what he didn't do. After the officers left, I sat in the driver's seat and let the engine run long enough for the heat to cut the fog on the glass. On my drive home, I took the lit main route instead of the side streets. I kept checking the mirror out of habit, looking for headlights that sat too steady. A white SUV followed me for 2 lights and turned off. I still had to work the next night. I brought a coworker in for the last hour by offering her my tips from the bottle returns. The manager rolled her eyes at that, but she also came back at closing to walk us out. We didn't see the man again that week. I kept storing the box cutter in my apron pocket anyway, because the weight of it kept me present, even if it wouldn't fix anything. The quiet at home didn't feel like the quiet at work. My house sits on a small lot with a chain link fence and a narrow side yard that turns to mud when it rains. Nothing special. One story, a short driveway, 2 steps up to the door with the paint chipping at the corner. 2 mornings later, I carried a trash bag out before work and stopped halfway down the steps. The ground along the side yard had kept the imprint of last night's rain, soft enough that your shoe will leave a shape for a day if the sun doesn't hit it. There were 3 boot prints near the fence, angled toward the driveway, then a small pause where the dirt was scuffed and thin, then 2 more prints headed back the way they came. The pattern of the lugs wasn't special, not like a brand logo. It was the spacing, the square of a missing corner lug, the long diagonal across the ball. I knew that print from the dust by the dumpster, the way you know a chipped tooth with your tongue. I stood there with the trash bag in my hand and tried to build a story that wasn't about me. A utility worker cut through the yard. A delivery guy pulled in, turned around, stepped in the mud. A neighbor's guest took a shortcut. Maybe. Except my fence gate squeaks and the latch was down. Except the prints came up to the thin shadow where my porch light doesn't quite reach, then turned back. I swept the prints out with a broom I keep by the porch, knowing full well that clearing them away was not the same thing as undoing them. Then I locked the side gate and changed nothing else, because changing everything would have meant he'd already taken more than a night from me. On my next closing shift, when the lights went down and the glass went black, I didn't look out as much. I finished the count early. I left the office door unlocked until the last 5 minutes to keep from feeling trapped. I called my co-worker to walk me out and felt stupid for needing it and smart for doing it anyway. If you're waiting for an answer about who he was or what he wanted, I don't have one. The scariest part of the night wasn't what he did. It was how easy it was for him to map my patterns without ever crossing the line that forces action. A few days after that, I noticed a new scuff on the paint near the front door handle of my house. Too small to be a tool mark, too high to be my dog. It could have been there for months. It could have been nothing. I stepped back from it, listened for any sound in the yard, and felt that thin, practical fear that makes you check the locks twice. I realized he didn't need to break in that night. He already knew where to find me. Closing time at Family Dollar was supposed to be the quietest part of the night. The doors were locked, the registers counted, and the only sound left was the constant hum of the refrigerators up front. That low droning noise was so steady, it almost made the silence heavier. The fluorescent lights buzzed above me, their faint flicker making the store feel like a fishbowl lit up against the empty parking lot outside. I'd done this dozens of times before. Tonight should have been no different. My name's Keith. I'd been an assistant manager there for a couple years, and closing alone wasn't unusual. On weeknights, the store felt like it belonged to me. I'd sweep the tile floors, the mop bucket squeaking against the linoleum, the faint smell of pine sol drifting up as I pushed it past the aisles. I'd double-check the bathrooms, bag up the trash, and push the heavy broom through the candy wrappers and dust that gathered near the registers. Outside, the strip mall had already shut down. The nail salon next door was dark, its neon sign dead. The laundromat 2 doors down had a single bulb flickering, buzzing so faintly I could hear it when I stepped into the alley. Beyond that, the lot stretched empty, the asphalt black except for the pale glow of a single streetlight. Our back door opened to a service alley nobody used after the delivery trucks pulled out. It wasn't the best neighborhood, but it wasn't the worst either. I told myself that every night, like it was supposed to mean something. I was in the stockroom, halfway through tying off a bag of trash, when I heard it. A knock. Sharp. Distinct. Like someone standing just on the other side of the steel door. I froze in place, trash bag dangling from my hand, but the knock never came again. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe the pipes. Maybe my brain playing tricks after a long day. Still, I couldn't shake it. I tied off the bag and carried it toward the back, planning to leave it by the door until I walked out front. But the closer I got, the more unsettled I felt. It wasn't a sound you could mistake. Someone had been out there. I paused a few feet away, staring at the steel door with its chipped gray paint and heavy bolt lock. The alley beyond it was always silent at night. Nobody wandered through there. Delivery trucks came in the morning, not after 10. I was 3 steps from the door when it happened again. 3 hard raps. Louder this time. Deliberate. The sound shot through me like ice water. My hand clenched around the trash bag until the plastic stretched tight, and my legs backed up on their own before I even realized I was moving. I slipped back into the stockroom shadows, sneakers whispering against the concrete floor. My pulse hammered in my ears. There was no reason for anyone to be back there. Deliveries were in the morning. My last cashier had left hours ago, and the district manager sure wasn't about to show up at 10:30 at night. Whoever it was, they weren't supposed to be there. I ducked behind a pallet stacked with Halloween decorations and dug my phone out of my pocket. My hands were trembling so badly I nearly dropped it. Who do you even call? My manager? 911? Someone's knocking at the back door sounded ridiculous. I told myself to wait it out, to just keep still until whoever it was gave up. But then came something worse. A voice. Low, muffled, impossible to make out through the steel. Not loud enough for words, but enough for me to know there was someone there. The knock could have been explained away. A voice meant a person. My stomach turned as I pressed myself tighter against the pallet. I shut my eyes and begged for it to stop. After a long stretch of silence, I almost convinced myself it was over. Then the doorknob rattled. Slow at first, then harder. Someone was twisting it, testing it, trying to find a way inside. Each clank of the metal latch vibrated through the frame, too purposeful to be a mistake. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't harmless. Whoever was out there wanted in. I stumbled deeper into the stockroom shadows and finally hit Lisa's number on my phone. She picked up on the second ring, groggy, like she'd just been asleep. I whispered, "Lisa, there's someone here. At the back door. They're trying to get in." Her tone changed instantly. "What? Are you serious? Who is it?" "I don't know. I can't see them. First knocking, now the handle." "Are you sure you locked the front?" she asked. That question hit me like a dart. I opened my mouth to answer, and that's when it happened. The rattling stopped, and for a few terrifying seconds there was only silence. Then a different sound ripped through the quiet. Glass shattering at the front of the store. A loud, deliberate crash that made the walls tremble. I felt my stomach drop as the freezer hum vanished beneath the ringing in my ears. Shards skittered across tile like marbles spilling everywhere. "Oh my God," I whispered. "They broke in." Lisa's voice shot back, panicked now. "Get out, Keith. Hide and call 911 right now." She didn't have to tell me twice. The words hit me like a slap, but my body wouldn't move right away. I sat there, phone clutched to my ear, staring at the swinging stockroom doors like they were the only thing separating me from a nightmare. The thought sank in hard. The back door had been a distraction. They wanted me there, listening, while they came in through the front. This wasn't random. They knew I was inside. My throat went dry as I ended the call with Lisa and dialed 911. For a second, My thumb hovered over the screen, terrified the dialing tone would be loud enough to give me away. When the dispatcher answered, my voice cracked so badly I almost couldn't get the words out. I explained I was alone, that someone had broken in, and that I was hiding in the back. "Sir, are you safe right now? Can they see you?" she asked. I don't think so," I whispered, so soft I wasn't sure she could even hear me. "Stay low. Stay quiet. Officers are on the way. Do you have a place you can lock yourself in?" I scanned the stockroom frantically. The swinging doors to the sales floor didn't lock. The office had a key, but it was across the room, wide open. The only door with a bolt was the one they'd rattled minutes earlier. That thought alone made my stomach twist. "No," I breathed. "There's nowhere." "Then don't move," the dispatcher said. "Stay hidden." I pressed myself flatter to the floor, wedging my body between the pallet and the wall. The concrete was icy against my cheek. Dust clogged my nose and throat, and I pinched it shut, terrified a sneeze would give me away. Somewhere nearby, a loose piece of plastic wrap shifted, the crinkle echoing far louder than it should have. My whole body locked up like I'd just betrayed myself. For a long moment, there was nothing. No voices, no movement, just the endless hum of the freezers, like nothing had happened at all. I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. Then came the footsteps, slow, steady, crunching on broken glass, heel to toe, deliberate, like they wanted me to hear every step. I clutched the phone so tightly it creaked in my hand. The steps stopped. Then a shelf creaked. Something slid, then toppled with a dull thud. My breath caught in my throat. They weren't just walking. They were moving things. Searching. The footsteps started again, closer this time. The sound carried down the aisle until it was right on the other side of the swinging doors. The door pushed in just a little. The faintest swing. A line of light widened across the stockroom floor, cutting straight toward me. A shadow stretched out long and thin, shifting as the figure leaned closer. I couldn't move. My heart thudded so loud I was sure they could hear it. For several seconds they just stood there, listening, breathing. I almost bolted. My eyes flicked to the office, 10 feet away, maybe 12, and I thought about running for it, locking myself in, but my legs refused. One step and they'd hear me. Finally, the shadow retreated. The door eased back, swinging shut on its hinge. The footsteps moved again, slower this time, fading into the far aisles, like they were circling, waiting for me to make a sound. I didn't breathe until I heard the sirens. Faint at first, then closer, until they filled the night outside. The footsteps inside stopped dead. Seconds later, I heard the front doors fly open, officers shouting commands as they swept through the store. Flashlights cut across the aisles, beams slicing through the darkness. I stayed hidden until one light swept the stockroom and landed on me, curled up behind the pallet. They cleared the building, but the intruder was gone. Just a shattered front window and a sick feeling that lingered in my chest. The officers pulled the security footage, and we watched it together on the tiny monitor in the office. The grainy black and white image showed a hooded figure stepping inside, crunching across the glass, and walking straight toward the backroom doors. At one point, they turned their head, just slightly, like they knew exactly where I was. Then, when the sirens grew close, they turned and bolted out the way they came. They didn't touch the registers. They didn't grab merchandise. They walked in, and they were looking for something. Or someone. The cops never caught them. No fingerprints. No leads. Nothing but a broken window and the grainy outline of someone who had known I'd be there, alone. Lisa tried to calm me down, but the truth was obvious. They weren't after the store. They were after me. I lasted one more week at that job. Every night after closing, I'd hear phantom knocks in the silence, whether they were real or not. That sound burrowed into me, sharper than any alarm, because the scariest part wasn't the broken glass, or even the shadow at the door. It was knowing someone had chosen me, specifically, and I'll never know why.